Okay, good day everyone. I hope that everybody's okay and safe. Today we're going to discuss about organizational development. Here are the contents that we're going to tackle today. First is the managing change. The second one is the organizational culture. Then the empowerment, downsizing, the effects of downsizing, and the last one is the work schedule. And now let's move on to the first reporter, which is Mr. Monsod. It's your turn.
Thank you. And we will discuss the managing change. In this content of managing change, we will discuss about the sacred cow hands. It is the negative behavior of an employee that may harm the progress of working routine in a workplace that is being observed by the company to find way to criticize or remove him or her, or rather the employer. Ang sinasabi dito is kapag nakita ito ng company yung mga negative behavior na merong katangian ng isang empleyado, yun, hanapan nila ng parang upang tanggalin siya o kaya naman sa pamamagitan ng pagdedemote or pwede rin mag-fire ito. At mayroon din 3 common types of sacred cow hands, and that is number 1, paper cows. It is the type of sacred cow hands in which it is the distribution of unnecessary paperwork that contains non-essential or not related reports in a workplace. Dito sa paper cow naman na type siya ng sacred cow hands, kumbaga, gumagawa na ng mga empleyado ng mga papers na hindi naman related. Kumbaga, parang minamadali kumbaga, na dapat sana yung ini-schedule ng company. Dahil ang iniisip kasi kapag hindi nila ito, ang iniisip kasi kapag sa tinakdang panahon, iniisip nila baka may magre-reklamong matatanggap. Kaya napagpasya na madali na lang yung paggawa sa mga paperwork or mga reports pa, and then i-report ito. Even though, dahil dito, may mga na-include na mga hindi masyadong related or non-essential na paperworks ang meron sa isang workplace pa. And then number 2 is the meeting cow. It is the type of sacred cow hands in which the meeting are in a workplace will be extensive and longer than it is executed. Dito naman sa meeting cow kasi, titignan kung gaano kahaba yung meeting na ini-schedule. Ang halimbawa is, tatanungin yung isang empleyado sa isa pang empleyado na sa workplace na pwede mag-set tayo ng meeting at aalamin kung gaano ito kahaba. Dahil dito, nabibinbin minsan yung mga oras, works at energy ng isang empleyado kahit ang employer mismo. Basta pa walang malaman kung gaano katagal at ano yung mga dapat pag-usapan. And then, number 3 is the speed cow. It is the type of sacred cow hands in which it is the arrangement of unnecessary deadline in our workplace. Dito sa speed cow kasi is nagsaset ito ng mga hindi gaano ka-importanteng deadline. Halimbawa, nag-schedule ito ng napakaaga in which hindi pa handa ng mga employees. Dahil dito, parang nawawala na ng ganado yung mga empleyado na gawin ito kasi medyo minadali yung company yung deadline. Dahil dyan, napipilitan gawin yung mga dahil lang sa deadline. Ayan yung speed cow. Next. The 5 stages of major organizational change. In number 1, denial. The employees reject any changes that occurred in the workplace. Halimbawa, sa isang company, may in-implement ng pagbabago ng isang company. Yung mga employees hindi pa handang maki-adapt. Kumbaga, in the first place, hindi pa nila tatanggapin yung isang changes na nangyayari. Parang gusto pa nila yung nakasanayan nila noon pa man. Kaya hindi pa sila ready na mag-adapt sa changes na in-implement ng isang company. Number 2, defense. The employees will find way to justify their action in workplace during the organizational changes. Dito naman sa defense naman, gagawin yung hanap ng rason kung bakit ginawa ng isang empleyado yung mga action dahil lang sa may pagbabagong implementation na ipinagawa ng isang company sa kanila. And then, dahil dito, gagawin nila yung inaatas sila ng isang company at hanap din sila ng paraan upang ma-justify kung bakit nila yung ginawa. And number 3, discarding. The employees will conform to the organizational changes that occurred in the workplace. Dito naman sa discarding kasi is, kailangan iwan nila yung kailangan ng empleyado na iwan nila yung kinagisnan nila at kailangan nila umayon sila sa pagbabago na in-implement ng company para sa kanila. Kumbaga, pinasasanay sila na marunong silang umadapt sa bagong working environment na ina-encounter nila. Number 4, the employees will find a way to adjust their new working habit in the workplace during the organizational changes. Dito naman sa adaptation naman, sinasanay ng mga empleyado na gawin yung mga bagong task na inaatas ng mga company na inaatas sa kanila. At dahil dito, kailangan gawin nila. Kahit alam nila na hindi pa sila sanay that time, pero kailangan nila itong gawin kasi ito yung nababapat na gawin ito. And number 5 is the internalization. The employees became immersed and they are ready to work in their new working environment. Dito naman sa internalization, nasanay na yung mga empleyado dahil dito, handa na silang umadapt sa bagong working environment na meron sila kasi sanay na sila, may experience na sila. Iniwan na nila yung mga dating kinagisnan at tatanggapin nila yung mga bagong task na inaatas sa kanila. And then there's 2 types of changes. Number 1 is evolutionary. The continuous changes in the workplace. Ang halimbawa ng evolutionary changes is, nung una is mga Game Boy, mga console games, yung, kumbaga yan yung unang ina-invento noon. Eh na yun, umusbong na yung mga PS2, Xbox, at saka iba po. And then doon naman sa number 2, yung revolutionary. The drastic changes that have occurred in the workplace and discarding the old or traditional ways in the workplace. Dito naman sa revolutionary, ang example naman niya is yung industrial revolution. Kumbaga, nung una is paghahabi lang yung ginagawa yung mga trabahador sa isang workplace. Pero habang tumatagal, habang nagbabago yung panahon, niyayakap nila yung technology at mga industrial na baga. Halimbawa, sewing machine. Nung una is paghahabi lang. Kumbaga, mano-mano lang yung pagtatay. Ngayon naman, sewing machine na. Kumbaga, gumagamit na sila ng mga makinayo upang makapag-produce sila ng maraming produkto at may papadala sa iba pang merkado upang tangkilikin ito ng mga mamayan. At ayan yung revolutionary change na examples. Next. The change agents. These are the people who like changes in the workplace. Ito naman yung mga tao na gusto nilang ng pagbabago. Kumbaga, handa sila tanggapin yung mga pagbabago na in-implement ng isang company. Kumbaga, halimbawa, kapag may nakita silang may simang bagay sa isang workplace and then suggest nila na aayusin ito. Ayan yung example ng change agents. And then, next is the change analyst. These are the people that voluntarily to do the changes for the sake of improvement in the organization. Dito naman sa change analyst, titignan ng mga tao sa isang company kung pwede ba nilang baguhin ito at kung may nakita sila ng may dapat baguhin ito para lang mapabuti ito sa progress ng organization or workplace na pinagtatabahunan nila. Excuse me. Ang receptive changer. These are the people that voluntarily to accept changes decided by another people. Dito naman, nakikiayon lang yung mga taong nasa isang workplace base sa ideya or pagbabago na naisip ito ng isa pang employee sa isang company. Nakikiayon lang kumbaga sa changes na naisipan nito ng isa pa pang empleyado. And then, next is the reluctant changes. These are the people will accept changes if necessary. Kumbaga, dito naman is, hindi basta-basta tatanggapin na pagbabagong implementasyon yung mga employees sa isang company. Pero gagawin lang nila kapag kinakailangan lang. Halimbawa, kapag may mga nakita silang hindi masyadong ganong ka-importante at gusto nila implement, hindi nila yung gagawin. Pero kapag kinakailangan talaga, then tsaka na lang nila tatanggapin. Kumbaga, they will only accepted kapag may nakita silang na naaayon sa progress ng isang company. And lastly, the change resistors. These are the people that reject any changes in the workplace. Dito naman sa change resistor, ay yung mga ayaw talaga magpabago. Mas gusto nila yung nakasanayan nilang nung sila ay nagtatrabaho pa. Kumbaga, just in case na mayroong pagbabago, ayaw nilang i-conform yung new policy or new implementation na pinagawa ng isang company sa isang empleyado. Next. And we will proceed to the organizational culture to be reported by the next reporter.
So now we're going to move on to the organizational culture. Organizational culture comprises the shared values, beliefs, and tradition that exist among individuals in organizations. It is this culture that establishes workplace norms of appropriate behavior or what's wrong or right, and defines roles and expectations that employees and management have of each other. Most cultures have a subculture. For example, the environment in which you were raised is a subculture of a bigger culture, the American culture. So, organizational culture, ito yung unspoken rules or mga unspoken na traditions na ginagawa ng mga employees sa isang workplace. So, halimbawa, yung mga rules nila, unspoken rules nila pag gumagamit ng mga printer, ng mga coffee machine sa isang company, ayun, mga organizational culture yon. So, next slide, please. Yan. So, changing culture. Making organizational changes doesn't necessarily mean that everything about the existing culture must change. According to one manager, the change process includes holding on to the successful elements of the present culture and adding new elements that are important. So, syempre, sa isang culture, hindi naman siya palaging nakaka-increase ng work productivity ng isang department. Merong mga culture na kailangan na nating baguhin, pero hindi naman necessarily na babaguhin lahat. Parang tatanggalin mo lang yung mga damaging, ititira mo yung mga nakakabuti naman talaga para dun sa workplace, and magdadagdag ka ng new culture na mas makakapag encourage pa sa employees para mas magtrabaho pa ng maigi. So, ayan, move on na tayo sa assessing the new culture. Assessment of the new culture involves a great deal of discussion and analysis and should include the following steps. So, next slide, please. So, step 1 needs assessment, because parts of the existing culture may actually support certain organizational changes. The current culture must be analyzed and compared with the desired culture to determine what might need to change. So, syempre, kung meron kang gustong baguhin sa workplace, dapat i-assess mo muna kung ano ba dapat yung baguhin. Parang, syempre, parang sa mga nakaraang topics lang din, di ba? Parang ina-assess muna kung kailangan ba ng ganito, kailangan ba ng ganyan. Tapos, kung pag na-assess na yung kailangan nilang baguhin, doon naman mag-i-introduce ng bagong bagong culture na kailangang i-implement dun sa workplace. So, step 2, determining executive direction. Management must then analyze the needs assessment to determine the decisions or actions that will reinforce the culture and to assess the feasibility of certain changes. So, ayun nga, dito sa step 2, mag-decision na yung management kung itutuloy ba nila yung plano nilang baguhin na culture or mag-stay na lang sila doon sa current culture kung hindi naman talaga ganun ka-damaging. Kasi syempre, gaya nga nang nasabi ni Monsud kanina, merong mga employees na nag-resist talaga ng change. Kumbaga, gusto nila kung ano yung nakasanayan nila, ayun lang talaga yung mangyayari. Ayun yung gusto nilang gawin sa workplace, kumbaga. Syempre, kailangan din yung i-consider ng management kapag gagawa sila ng decision na maglabas ng bagong organizational culture. Next slide. Step 3, implementation considerations. This area addresses how the new culture will be implemented. Will committees or ad hoc groups be set up to carry out changes, or will management execute the changes? If the organization's desired culture includes encouragement of more input by employees, they should be allowed to participate in implementing the empowering organization in order to support the new culture. So, dito sa step 3, ito na yung i-implement mo na yung new culture kung sakali na pag-decisionan mo na i-implement mo na yung organizational culture na na-come up mo. Dito rin nag-i-include kung paano mo siya i-implement, kung paano yung announcement mo, sino yung mag-oversee para masigurong nasusunod yung culture na ini-implement, and so much more. So, step 4, training. Culture change means a change of philosophy, and that ultimately means different role expectations. As with any new skills, all organizational members must be trained in a new philosophy for the new culture to thrive and be long-lasting. So, dito sa training, syempre, ayun nga, kailangan din malaman ng employees, syempre, kung ano yung new culture na yun na gustong i-implement ng management. Syempre, di naman sila manghuhula din. So, kung merong gustong i-implement ng HR na bagong goal sa isang company, dapat tinitrain din nila dapat nag-consider din sila ng training para sa employees nila, at ma-discuss nila yung bagong goal na gusto nilang i-implement dun sa workplace. So, next slide. Step 5, the evaluation of new culture. As with any changes, an evaluation mechanism must be established to review the new culture. Issues such as whether the change actually has occurred or whether old norms and procedures still exist should be addressed. If change has not occurred, additional strategies must be identified to establish and support the new culture. So, dito sa step 5, syempre, i-evaluate mo kung meron bang naging epekto sa workplace yung bagong in-implement na culture. Kung yung work productivity pa ng mga employees is nag-increase, yung motivation ba nila is nag-increase, or baka baliktad yung nangyari at nag-default back pa rin talaga yung employees sa old norms. So, dapat ina-assess yun ng ng management para kung sakaling hindi naging effective yung una nilang strategy, nakapag-isip pa sila ng iba pang strategy na gagana na ngayon sa workplace. So, creating dissatisfaction with existing culture. Just as creating dissatisfaction with the status quo in general is necessary to promote change, for employees to accept a new culture, the existing culture and status quo must be upset. This might mean communicating to employees the future impact on continuing to do business as usual. Maintaining the new culture if the new culture is expected to last, developing new reward system and selection methods should occur. So, dito sa creating dissatisfaction with existing culture, ito yung parang pinapaalam mo sa employees kung ano yung mga pros and cons ng kung ano yung nakasanayan nila. Kung halimbawa sa paggamit ng gantong printer. So iaano mo kung meron kang bagong goal doon, dapat i-discuss mo rin naman yung dating goal doon na naging dahilan kung bakit mo babaguhin yung culture na yon. So yun. Next slide. So a selection of employees. Future employees should be selected on the basis of how well they optimize the new culture. For example, if the new culture is one of team decision making, new employees should have not the ability but the willingness and personality to perform in such an environment. As current employees are replaced by new ones, the new culture can become frozen into the desired system selected by leadership. On the other hand, continuing to hire employees who prefer a more structured management philosophy and who work better alone will eventually cause the organization to revert to its old structure. So baga, dito sa selection of employees, dapat yung mga future employees na i-hire ng isang organization or company is, syempre, dapat willing sila mag-adapt dun sa dun sa culture na nangyayari dun sa workplace. Hindi pwedeng parang kung ano yung gusto ko, ayun lang yung gagawin ko. Kung kailangan kong mag-work sa isang team, ay hindi ko tatanggapin yun kasi mas gusto kong mag-work mag-isa, hindi pwede yun. Dapat yung new employees mo, meron silang willingness na i-accept kung ano man yung culture na ihaharap sa kanila pag na-hire na sila dun sa workplace. So, organizational socialization, the process whereby new employees learn the behaviors and attitudes they need to be successful in the organization. It also helps any newcomer to the organization define his role and what is expected of him in his position. So, dito sa organizational socialization, ito nga yung pinafamiliarize mo yung isang new employee dun sa kung ano yung culture na nakasanayan dun sa company para hindi naman siya para hindi naman siya maligaw kung ano yung dapat niyang gawin at hindi niya dapat nagawin. So, next slide. There are also formal ways in which organization can influence the socialization process. Yung una is yung rituals, procedures in which employees participate to become one of the gang. Activities such as annual awards, banquets, or staff picnics are rituals that reinforce the impression of a caring organization. Another ritual is requiring all employees to go through a probationary period before being considered a permanent employee. So, ito yung sa rituals, ito yung i-expose mo yung isang employee sa activities na traditionally ginagawa talaga sa isang organization para maging one of the gang sila, para maging mas comfortable silang mag-work dun sa workplace. And syempre pag mas comfortable ka sa workplace, mas gaganahan ka magtrabaho. So number 2 is symbols. Communication tools that convey certain messages for employees. For example, establishment of an on-site wellness center conveys the organization's interest in health. In addition, communication techniques such as the use of mission and value systems can help acculturate the new person to his environment. Ito yung symbols, ito yung parang mga posters na nakapost sa company na kung saan doon nakikita yung kung ano yung culture na nandun sa isang workplace. Like ayun nga yung mission saka vision ng isang company. Doon nalalaman ng isang employee kung ano yung mga organizational culture na kailangan niyang sundin para maging tuloy nakaisa siya dun sa organization na kinabibilangan niya. So, I think that's all. Okay, let's move on to the empowerment.
Okay. Okay, next is the empowerment. So, empowerment, this is a key aspect of leadership and decision making. So, as discussed in the chapter 10, many employees are more satisfied with their jobs if they feel have some control over what they do. And many organizations are empowering employees to participate in and make decisions. But before that, paano ba natin ma-empower ang employees? So, alam naman natin na empowering employees is a culture. So, nakakatulong to increase the trust ng bawat isa at para magkaroon ng maayos na komunikasyon. Kasi 'di ba, empowering employees means nakakapagbigay tayo to them as a freedom, a trust, and a support to them to do their job well and to contribute to the company's goals. And next is making the decision to empower. So this is just seems like you are interested in learning something about empowering a decision making. Kasi 'di ba, empowering decision making is an ongoing process. So that was involved learning, adapting, and continuously improving. Next is the 7 factor in making the decision to empower. So dito, meron tayong 7 factors in making decision to empower. Una is the importance of decisions quality. So this factor can be considered in making a decisions is whether one decision will be better than another. So alam naman natin na decision quality is medyo critical siya na aspect of a good decision making. Kasi this is an ability to make good decisions that lead to a better outcomes. And to be sure that we reach a decisions which make us sense. So we need to understand the concept of what makes good quality decision. Kasi malaking impact at significant to sa buhay natin, especially to someone who are a leader. So, yung team leader sa isang company or supervisor, ganun. So, sobrang importante to sa isang leader just to determine on how the organization may proceed. So, nakadepende din kasi ito on how we make it. And importante talaga na maayos ang pagdidesisyon kasi nakakatulong to achieve a life satisfaction. Sabi nga nila, di ba, a good decision do not guarantee a good outcomes. Kasi sometimes, may mga pagkakataon din na i-influensyahan yung mga decision natin sa buhay sa bawat isa sa atin just because sa timing, sa luck, kaya posibleng yung good decision still reach a bad outcomes. Next is yung pangalawa, leader knowledge of the problem area. So the second factor in decision making involves the extent to which leader have a sufficient information to make the decisions alone. So ito yung abilidad ng isang leader to have an understanding of their problem that they are trying to solve alone. Kasama na ito yung understanding nila kung anong problem ba to, anong cause and effect nito, kasi 'di ba, no work traits ng isang leader talaga. They are persistent and willing to assume sa mga responsibilities, and dapat confident sila and has a knowledge of the problem na gagawin nila at yung mga gagawa silang mga epektibong action and solution sa particular na problem na kinakaharap nila. So, next is pangatlo, ito yung structure of the problem. The third factor of concern in decision making is the extent to which a leader knows what information is needed and how it can be obtained, the problem structure. So, dito sinasabi na structure of the problem refuses in a way on how to on how it is presented and analyze the problem. Like somehow you are demonstrating or organizing. So, like, nag-state ka or nag-organize ka para mas mabilis or mag-gets ng nakararami. Kasi, lalo na pag ikaw yung team leader or ikaw yung team leader doon. So, kailangan talaga gumawa ka ng mga ways na epektibo and yung mga ways sa pag-demo mo na alam mo at magigets din agad ng mga subordinates mo ganon. So parang sa paggawa din natin ng research paper, 'di ba yung problem naka-structure talaga doon, naka-organize, naka-analyze doon para pagdating sa natin sa defense ganon. So mas madaling magigets at hindi siya magulo. Parang ganon. So next slide po. Mag-i-end na din pala. Next slide po, ayan. So, pang-apat is the importance of decision acceptance. So, the 4 decision-making factors involve the degree to which it is important that that the decision to be accepted by the others. So, para ma-short and precise, so this is just followers accept the decision made by a leader. Pero leader must just focus more on decision acceptance kung ang decision quality is quietly more important din. So halimbawa ako is isang HR. So ayun ako nag-a-assess ako ng mga interviewer. So nag-interview ako ng mga new applicants. So ayun nga, after interview, for example, nag-decide ako na di ko siya i-hire kasi nakita ko yung mga ganon-ganon. So as an applicant, so kailangan din na i-accept niya kung anong decision na nagawa ng HR or yung halimbawa yung owner ng company ganon. And next is the probability of the decision acceptance. The 5th decision making factor is subordinate acceptance. So ito yung probability. So probability, from the word probability, ito yung how likely something to be happen. So yung parang you felt unsure, parang ganon. And very crucial siya to make a better decision and deciding, analyzing whether gawin mo ba ito or kung alam mo agad kung ano yung outcome, parang ganon. Parang you have tawag nun, parang ka ba, bother ka or parang nagdadalawang isip ganon. And meron ka na agad na isip na outcomes kung gagawin mo yung mga bagay na ganun. So next is the subordinate trust and motivation. So the 6 factors excuse me, in making decision process is the extent to which subordinates are motivated to achieve the organizational goal and thus can be trusted to make decisions that will help the organization. So alam naman natin talaga na ito is importanting factor sa workplace. So when we say trust, we believe that persons or something will act like reliable. So, yung feeling na parang tawag nito, mapagkakatiwalaan and may dependable manner. And motivation is just driving force building in individual behaviors and actions. So, let's apply this to our workplace. So, dapat sa bawat isa sa atin or sa ka-workmates natin, or yung tipong you have to building trust and tawag nito, giving motivation, giving advices, at nakakapag-communicate ang bawat isa just to do work very well. Kasi 'di ba, pag unmotivated or bother yung tawag nito, ang ka-workmates mo or yung individual, so wala silang trust sa isa't isa. So you can't do your job very well. So naaapektuhan din yung trabaho, 'di ba? And kaya if motivated and trusted yung at gumagawa ka ng trust sa isa't isa, nakaka-benepisyo din to sa'yo as a worker or sa buong company. And kaya importante talaga to. Halimbawa, ikaw tawag nito, supervisor or leader ka. So, dapat as a leader, dapat may quality ka na talagang as a leader talaga. Kasi 'di ba sabi nga nila, a good leader should be a good follower. So kung leader ka, dapat kailangan ipa-follow mo din yung mga dapat kailangan kasi 'di ba leader ka ikaw yung talagang kung halimbawa hindi maayos ng leader so na-impluwensyahan din yung mga workmates mo. And pang-pito is probability of subordinate conflict. So the final factors of our considerations in the decision making involves the amount of conflict that is likely among the subordinate when various solutions to the problems are considered. So itong factor na to, itong panghuling factor na to, ito yung isang factor kung bakit minsan unbothered or de-organize yung paggawa ng decision or paggalaw ng bawat isa sa workplace dahil sa pagkakaroon ng conflict, problema ng bawat workmates. So di talaga ito maiiwasan pero pwede natin siya ma-minimize ng bawat isa on how paano natin i-deal, paano natin itatatrato yung bawat isa. Kaya yun nga sabi ko na tawag nito, good leader should be a good follower. So isa sa pagkakataong posibleng magkaroon ng conflict kasi minsan pinapairal din natin minsan yung ating emotion, yung ating pride. Di natin mamimintin yung pagiging professionalism natin dahil minsan may pagkakataon talaga na pinapairalan talaga natin yung emotion natin. Kaya minsan natatakpan yung mga bagay-bagay na dapat gawin. And next slide please. Decision-making strategies using the Broom-Yeton model. So ito yung mga strategies ng isang leader kung paano nila i-deal, paano nila gagawin yung mga paano yung mga decision-making nila, paano nila emphasize, paano nila gawin, ganun. And una is the autocratic one strategy. So leader use the available information to make the decision without consulting their subordinate. So ito yung strategy ng isang leader to make a decision kung saan he or she or as a leader can use an available information para sa pagpaplano or sa paggagawa ng decision na walang consultation sa kanyang mga subordinate. Bali, as a leader ka, so responsibilities mo na gumawa ka ng strategy para mas mapunan mo yung problema or mabigyan mo ng solusyon yung problema na yon. So, without consulting your subordinates. So, next is autocritic number 2 strategy. So, ito yung gathering, leaders obtain the necessary information for their subordinate and then make their own decision. So, ito yung gathering basic additional information sa iba just to inform na yung decision mo na ganito ganyan and ayun gagawin mo siyang independently. Gagawin mo siyang mag-isa ganun. And next is the consultative one strategy. Leaders using this strategy share to the problems on an individual basis with some or all of their subordinates. So dito naman sinishare ng details ng isang leader yung situation with a small number of subordinates or the others in order to gather the high quality opinions and then decide independently. Next is yung number 4 consultative 2 strategy. So leader using the strategy to share the problems with their subordinate as a group. So di ba yung consultative 1 is lang siya, parang small number of others, small number of subordinates. So ito namang consultative to, it facilitate a group to generate new idea, share impression, and then para makagawa sila ng mga decisions, then ayun nga. Next is the number 5 is a group 1 strategy. The leader share the problems with the group and lets group reach a solution. So dito naman, as a group siya. So ang purpose lang nitong strategic group is just to analyze and examine the competitive environment among the competitors with an industry. Kasi sa company, so maraming mga companies, maraming mga industries, nagsilabasan, ganun. So it is also help to identify the strategic decisions of the direct rivals in the industry. And this will in turn help shape strategic moves of your own organization. For example, nito yung mga fast food restaurant, Jollibee, McDo, ganon, and yung mga food services nila. Next slide, please. Ayan. So next is the levels of employee input. When employers talk about empowering employees, they seldom intend to let employees make all of the decisions affecting an organization. So, ito yung in which employees give an input value through surveys employee, meetings. So, in order to them to get to generate new ideas, new impression, and highlight and resolve existing problem kung meron man. Kaya 'di ba, pinaka ano talaga, importante talaga yung pagkakaroon ng meeting sa isang workplace. Ayun, kung saan lahat mabibigyan ng pagkakataon na ibahagi ang kanilang mga opinion na nasa loob nila, na hindi nila mailabas-labas, ganon. So, halimbawa, magbigay na yung team leader or maghain na ng mga topics. So, yun. Kaya nagkakaroon ng meeting dito para mas mabahagi nila kung ano yung mga nasa, mga opinion nila. Next is ayun, sa level of employee input, meron tayong 5. So, una dito is ang absolute. Employee is solely responsible for making decision and is responsible for the outcomes of the decision. So, ayun. Next is the shared participative team. So, employee has an equal vote in making decision. Employee reaches consensus with others to make decisions. Ayun, ano naman siya, maintindihan naman, share and participative team. And then next is the advisory. So advisory employee makes recommendations, suggests new ideas, and provide inputs. Dito sa advisory kasi, 'di ba? Halimbawa sa isang school, 'di ba, meron tayong advisory para para mag-guide yung mga estudyante. Ganon din sa trabaho. So itong advisory, isa siyang type ng advice that is specific and usually important. Kaya sa work may mga advisories na dapat gawin, then meron din ang purpose kasi nito sa isang workplace, bakit may mga advisory ganon, para mas ma-maintain natin yung good communication and ma-develop natin yung social skill natin ng bawat isa, ng bawat subordinates, ng bawat workmates, ganon. And then the fourth na is the ownership of own products. So at this level, employees are still told to do but are solely responsible for the quality of their input. So, 'di ba dito, mo naman talaga maintindihan lang ownership of your own product. So, yun yung employees are still told what to do and they are the responsible for the quality of their output. And the last one ng levels of employee input is just yung following. So, employees at the following level have no real over-control their job. And they given instruction about what to do, when what to do, and what to do and how it should be done. So, dito kasi, employees is closely or constantly supervised, giving some instruction, kaya apaka-importante talaga din ng magkaroon ng training para alam mo kung ano yung gagawin mo, but it's constantly following din. Kaya pag may mga baguhan sa trabaho, madaming mga instruction na binibigay sa'yo na dapat mong gawin, na dapat mong sundin, either tuturuan ka ng supervisor, i-guide ka, or even yung co-workmates mo is ganito, ganyan yung gagawin. So next is okay. So dito tayo nag-end sa following. So next, mag-proceed na tayo dito sa consequences of empowerment personnel. So dito sa consequences of empowerment personnel, bali, ito mga consequences na to, ito yung mga taking control of your own life and making positive decision based on what you want. And meron siyang mga iba't ibang parts. So una is to increase the satisfactions for most. Then, of course, kalakip doon is yung stress. Then after niyan sa stress, meron din dalawang types, dalawang parts, which is to decrease stress due to the greater control. So halimbawa, sorry, maingay kasi. decreased risk due to the greater control. Then the next one is increased risk due to the greater responsibilities. So halimbawa pag marami ka ng responsibilities, tumataas yung responsibilities mo sa workplace or yung trabaho mo. So 'di ba, tumataas din yung level ng stress mo. Next is yung financial. So financial naman meron magkakaroon ka ng mga bonuses, pay increase, so tataas yung sahod mo, tataas yung mga mo. Then sa career naman, it's increased job security, your promotion, yung mga ganyan yung mga consequences ng empowerment sa personal na life mo or yung dito sa trabaho mo. Then it's increased marketability and also it's increased the chance of being terminated. So yun lamang po, and mag-move na tayo to the next reporter, which is downsizing.
Good morning. My topic is all about downsizing. Di ko na siya babasahin yung pinaka-meaning. Kung ano lang naintindihan ko dito para mas mabilis. Downsizing, ito ay isang reducing a workforce o pag-aalis ng trabaho. Based kasi sa aking mga nabasa, ginagawa nila ito upang mapanatili nila ang mga kompetensya o productivity na manggagawa. Nang ganun is mas maayos yung takbo ng isang company, and for me, nakabase pa rin talaga sa performance ng isang employee. Syempre kung hindi ka naman siguro tatanggalin sa trabaho kung may maayos na performance ka, di ba? Next is, how does the downsizing impact the role of human resource management? Dito naman is, kung mas malaki ang isang business o negosyo, mas malaki ang role ng isang HR, and sa pagkakaalam ko din, sila yung humahawak sa mga employee and nagpapasahod dito. And bale, sila talaga yung nag-handle mismo ng like sa isang company. Pero hindi totally, di ba? Syempre may mga pa dyan, pinakang boss o yung owner ng company. Then, reason for downsizing companies. Nagaganap naman ito kung gusto ng isang owner na restructure ang isang company, and yung iba para daw malis yung gastos, dahil sa panahon natin ngayon, mas less na yung performance ng mga tao kaysa yung ginagawa, and more on digital na rin kasi tayo ngayon and yung iba ganyan ang ginagawa para mabawasan yung tauhan, syempre para makatipid sila, kaya pala sila sobrang yumayaman kasi hindi na sila nagdadagdag ng tao, more na lang talaga digital. Next is, why do companies downsize? Ito naman kapag hindi mo namimit yung income na gusto ng company and yung target for a year, syempre sobrang daming kalaban dito pagdating sa negosyo. Halimbawa, kung may business ka and yung presyo ng product mo is nasa tamang presyo lang, then yung the same ng product mo, syempre magbebenta sila ng mura para madaling mabenta. So sino pa yung bibili sa'yo kung mayroong mas mura, di ba? Kaya pangit talaga yung kalakaran dito sa Pilipinas, daming manggagaya. Next is reducing costs. Thank you. Dito naman pumapasok yung payroll and yung mga benefits ng bawat employee. Second is increased productivity. Mas dapat na productive ang company, lalo-lalo na yung mga employee, para less gastos, sabi nga, and higit na maging productive ang mga manggagawa para mas maayos yung mga gagawin nilang trabaho sa isang company. Next is increased value. Dito naman is mas dapat na ang isang company is pataasin ang kita. So, mangyayari nila na manggaling sa shareholder o namumuhunan dito. Kumbaga, maghahanap pa sila ng ibang mamumuhunan para mas malaki yung maging maging puhunan sa itatayo nilang market, ganun. Next is sharpen focus. Minsan kasi ang ibang employee mas nakapokus sila sa ibang bagay like sa ano, 'di ba? Like sa trabaho. So sinasabi lang dito is ito yung pinaka-target nila sa mismong trabaho. Wag yung sa ibang bagay. Kasi ano naman yun eh. Lugi yung company pag ganun eh. Next is types of next please. Ito na pala. Types of downsizing. Number 1, reducing workforce. Ayun nga. Dito nagbabawas sila ng mga tauhan in a professional way naman. Syempre like kung anong sector ba yung pwedeng alisin, and meron naman silang basis para dito like sa retirement, ganon. Inaasikaso nila yan. Tsaka yung mga pasaway, yung mga tiniterminate, ganon siya. And number 2 is redesigning work. Yung sistema naman dito is maaaring magbago sila ng vision, and marami ding mababagong mga plano ng sistema ng company kasi minsan 'di ba nga may nalulugi, and dun sila another plan sa ganong sitwasyon. Kasi kung nalulugi ko na, ba't itutuloy mo pa, 'di ba? Number 2 is aso na nga ako, reducing company. Number 2 is redesigning work. Yung sistema dito is maaaring magbago sila ng vision, and maaari din magbago ng plano. Hindi. Sabi ko, number 3 pala. Sorry. Approaching system. Tinitingnan ng pagbabago ng kultura o sistema ng company sa ganon, mabawasan ng gastos at mapataas ang productivity ng mga employee. Ganon siya. Benefits of downsizing employees. Number 1 is losing a staff. Based sa pagkakaintindi ko dito, nagiging benefits to kasi mas natutugunan ang pangangailangang financial, o pwedeng hindi lang ito ang dahilan ng isang company na nagtatanggal sila ng tauhan, syempre para mabawasan yung mga bayaran nilang employee. Pero tama lang din yun in a way na yung employee na hindi naman talaga nagtatrabaho ng maayos, yun talagang dapat tanggalin nila. Pero dapat may pa rin sila, in a professional way pa rin dapat. Number 2 is losing credibility. Dito maaaring mag-alangan. For example, ang isang vendor na nagpapatuloy ng isang negosyo, kung konti lang naman ang kanilang kinikita, lalo na kung porsyentuhan lang yung labanan, sa ngayon kasi maraming ganyan, kaya wala masyado umuunlad sa pagtitinda na yan, di ba? Sobrang baba ng porsyento na nagaganap. Sino pagaganahan magtrabaho kung wala rin namang kikitain, sayang lang yung pagod. And number 3 is affects the bottom line. Excuse. Ito naman yung pagbabawas ng laki ng isang company, and na hindi naapektuhan ng bottom line ng company. Maaring pagbawas din ng tao, pero sa services naman is bababa. Pero depende pa rin naman ito siguro sa strategy nila. Kung magbabawas sila siguro ng employee, siguro yung servisyo nila is bababa din, di ba? Siguro ma-handle naman nila yan, depende sa gagawin nilang plano. Number 4 is fewer opportunities. Dito naman nagbabawas sila ng mga nasa posisyon, like sa mga department, di ba lahat ng company may mga department yan. Ginagawa ito ng hindi angkop para sa paglago ng company, dahil yung mga pagkakataon ay limitado lang din naman, and wala sa loob ng organisasyon, kaya hindi nila pinalalampas ito. And number 5, negative public perception. Ito yung mga negative na pananaw, like yung opinion, ugali ng mga tao tungkol sa isang product, o in short, ito talaga yung pinakang issue ng isang company. Dito na hindi binibigyang halaga ang isang company product dahil sa masamang issue, ganyan na nakakasama sa image nila. So pwede rin sabihin talagang public issue. and I think makaka-apekto ng malakas sa kanilang company at tuluyang malulugi dahil dun sa issue na to. And pag ganong issue, di ba, wala na, magsasara na yung company na yun pag may issue na yung kanilang product kasi sino pa bang bibili nun? Ganun lang. Next po is yung effect of downsizing by Mark.
Okay, so effects of downsizing. So effects of downsizing is never fun. So downsizing is never a fun task talaga since kailangan nating magbawas ng employees even though medyo labag din sa kalooban ng employer. Though may mga advantages din dun, may marami din namang disadvantages gaya ng examples na ipapakita ko. So, first is yung terminating employees. So, this is never a fun task. So, word termination sounds doomful, final and permanent. People work to support their families and their lifestyles without a job providing for yourself and those that depend on you is extremely challenging. Therefore, layoffs put former employees in a tough position and should never be taken lightly. Although downsizing may be deemed necessary, deciding to make large cuts in the company's workforce is going to impact a large number of people. So downsizing is marami talagang maapektuhan, lalo na yung mga taong nangangailangan ng trabaho para syempre makapag-provide sa kanilang family. So, next slide please. So, loss of knowledge and experience. Companies invest a lot of time and resources into hiring and training employees. In theory, every employee should have the essential skills and knowledge base required to complete their job functions. Also, the longer an employee is with a company, the more information and skills they can acquire. Therefore, when employees are laid off during their downsizing process, the company loses more than just a warm body. They lose the employees' knowledge, experience, and expertise. In addition, downsizing companies typically do not hire new employees, which means there will be a void instead of a replacement. So, instead of syempre, parang kailangan ng downsizing para ma-maintain natin yung kompetensya sa isang company. Hindi lang natin malolos ang hindi lang mababawasan yung manpower natin, kundi mababawasan din yung knowledge and experience ng mga tao natin. So next is the increase of workloads and pressure on the remaining employees. When companies downsize, gaps within the workload are created. This adds pressure to the remaining employees to not only complete their current job functions, but also to pick up additional work to compensate for the terminated employees. The additional responsibilities of the top of their current ones can create stress and pressure on remaining employees and negatively affect the morale and motivation of the team. In addition, when employees are bogged down to the day-to-day work tasks, there is a little time left to learn a new skill or expand their current knowledge base. This can create a stagnant work environment and stunt current employees' growth potential. So, pag nagbabawas tayo ng tao, parang nagkakaroon na-anxious na din yung ibang employees natin since natatakot na din sila baka sila yung sa susunod na matanggal, tapos baka naiisip din nila yung pressure kasi yung supposedly na trabaho ng natanggal na employee is malilipat sa kanila, kaya tumataas yung pressure and nawawala na sila ng motivation para magtrabaho. So next slide please. So loss of trust and security. Layoffs tend to put people on edge. For obvious reasons, terminated employees are feeling a sense of insecurity as they are being forced to leave the company and find other work. The remaining employees may also struggle with downsizing. Even if their job has not been cut, knowing that their company is willing to lay off employees to cut costs can be an unsettling realization. Although the remaining employees may be relieved to be spared from termination, there is oftentimes a loss of trust with management and a loss of comfort in job security. So ito na nga yung sinasabi ko kasi Parang pag nagtatanggal kasi tayo ng employees, parang nagkakaroon ng hinala yung ibang employees na din na baka sila yung susunod. Therefore, nawawala na sila ng tiwala sa kanilang management team, sa kanilang supervisor, sa mga HR, and sa kanilang boss. So next is legal issues. Although downsizing is legal in the United States, companies that choose to downsize may experience legal backlash, specifically from terminated employees. If employees that were laid off feel as though they were laid off due to discriminatory reasons, they may have grounds for a lawsuit. Legal consequences are not guaranteed in all downsizing situations. However, they are a definite possibility. So, pag nag-downsize daw tayo, although legal naman siya sa US, for example, parang may kapat pa din yung mga employees na natanggal na magreklamo or magsampa ng kaso since baka natanggal lang din sila due to, ayun nga, discriminatory reasons. Parang kahit wala namang matibay na basis para natanggal sila, pero pwede pa rin silang magreklamo. So next is client relations. When a large number of employees are laid off, it may impact client relationships. If there are fewer people employed to handle clients and their accounts, the customer experience will suffer. Also, if clients had a great working relationship with an employee that was then terminated, they may be frustrated to have a new person assigned to their account. These frustrations may lead to a loss of profitability and customer satisfaction. So, halimbawa, nagkaroon na ng magandang relationship. Halimbawa, sa customer service tayo. Naging suki ang isang customer. Parang may maganda silang relationship ng sales lady, sabihin natin. Tapos, biglang natanggal yon. So, parang mata-turn off yung customer na yon since wala na siyang katsikahan dun sa mall, wala na siyang katsikahan dun sa stall nyo. So, therefore, masisira yung profit nyo. Yung ano nyo, target na profit nyo, tsaka yung customer satisfaction. Next slide, please. Work schedules. Ano pa ba to? Wait. Ako pa ba to?
Yung work schedule sa akin na.
Ay, sorry. Next reporter na po. Thank you.
So, yung work schedule refers to the specified days and time that an employee expected to complete the task of their employment position. The schedule that employee works can impact their responsibilities, payment, work benefits, and federal and state law requirements. So, alam naman natin from the word schedule, ito yung mga nakaspecified na time, day para sa pagtatrabaho. And then sa work schedule, meron tayong compressed work weeks. A compressed work schedule allows an employee to work a traditional 35 to 40 hours work week in less than 5 work days. For example, a full-time employee could work 10 hours for 4 days instead of 8 hours in 5 days. So yung compressed work weeks, parang binabawasan niya lang yung araw sa isang linggo mong pagtatrabaho pero nadadagdagan yung oras as long as buo mo yung 40 hours work week. So, dito, kasi yung 8 hours a day, pag dinimes mo siya 5 days a day, equivalent to 40. So, kung sa isang araw magdadagdag ka ng 2 oras, like yung 8 hours maging 10 hours, so, pababawasan yung day, magiging 4 days na lang. Kasi 10 times 4 equals to 40 hours in a week. Then next is yung moonlighting refers to the practice of working a second job outside the normal business hours. So yung moonlighting, ito yung pagtatrabaho ng dalawa pero magkaibang schedule, like sa mga fast food 7 to 11 ka lang, and then pagkatapos ng pag-off ka na dun sa work mo, meron ka namang ibang trabaho. So, tinatawag dun is moonlighting. Next po. Tapos, flex time. A work schedule in which employee have some flexibility in the hour they work. Flexible hours refers to a work schedule that allows employees to work whatever hour they want as long they complete the contracted time in the day. So yung flex time, ito naman yung mga employee, pwede silang mag-decide kung anong oras sila mag-start, anong oras sila mag-end, as long as matapos nila yung contracted time in a day. For example, sa isang araw, 8 hours yung pagtatrabaho natin. So, pwede ka mag-start ng 9 and then count ka lang ng 8 hours kung anong oras ka mag-e-end. So, wala siyang fixed time kung anong oras ka mag-i-start. Next is yung sa flex time, merong tatlong basic components of flex time. Una, merong bandwidth, tapos yung core hours, flexible work hours, and then gliding time. Yung bandwidth, ito yung total number of potential hours available for work each day. So, halimbawa, yung oras ng trabaho mo sa isang araw is 8 hours. So, yun yung tinatawag na bandwidth. Next is yung core hours. Yung core hours are shift times when everyone must be on site in the core working hours refers to a specified block of time during the day when all employees are expected to available. So, yung core hours, ito yung fixed time. Kung halimbawa, yung oras ng trabaho nyo, 7 to 11, so dapat 7 on time, andun ka na sa trabaho mo, then mag-i-end din yun, 11 din. Then next is yung flexible work hours. Means employees can begin their work earlier in the day or later than the originally set time. So yung flexible work hours, halimbawa yung start ng work mo is 7, so pwede ka na mag-start ng 6. Tapos, gliding time. The most flexible of this schedule, with this system, an employee can choose her own hours without advance notice or scheduling. Employees can come and go as they please as long as they work 8 hours each day and 40 hours each week. So, yung gliding time, parang ano lang din siya, yung flex time na kung saan pwede ka magpumili ng kung anong oras ka mag-start, anong oras ka mag-out, as long as sa isang araw matapos mo yung 8 hours and then in 1 week matatapos mo yung 40 hours. Next pa. Flexible working schedule are categorized as flexitor system and then modified flexitor. Yung flexitor system, the employee must submit a schedule on weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly basis depending on the organization. So dito, yung employee, napapasa sila ng mga schedule like halimbawa, ngayong week na to, schedule ko, start ako ng 7 to 11 or 11 to 4. Yun yung ipapasa nila para alam ko ano yung schedule nila. Next is yung modified flexitor. The employee must schedule her hours in advance but can change their hour on daily basis with some advance notice. So, pwede silang mag-schedule ng mas pa-advance dun sa specific hours na date or hours na na schedule sa work. Tapos, peak time pay. With peak time pay, a certain employees are encouraged to work only part-time but are paid at higher hourly rate for those hours than employee. So, yung peak time pay, ito yung yung nag-aano sila ng part-time pero binabayaran sila ng mataas na price. Kasi in this katulad sa fast food, mas demand yung yung mga part-time job kasi yun yung mga oras na yun na kung saan maraming customer. Next pa. Flexible working schedule are categorized as work at home, shift work. So sa work at home, ito yung employees set their own schedule by working at home rather than workplace by using telecommuting. Telecommuting, I mean. So ito yung pagtatrabaho sa bahay, gumagamit sila ng telecommuting, yung mga computers, gadgets, and other online platforms. Next is yung shift work. The term shift work refers to any work schedule that falls outside the hours of 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. Shift work can include evening, night, and early morning shift. So, alam naman natin yung shift, yung paglipat ng schedule mo. Like, ngayon, hanggang umaga ka lang. So, 6 to 11 ka lang. Then, mamaya, meron ding start ng 1 to 6 ng gabi. Tapos, shift can be either fixed or rotated. When we say fixed shifts, separate groups of employees permanently work the day shift, swing shift, and night shift. So, yung fixed shift, so parang fixed na talaga siya. Yung halimbawa, yung grupo ng isang employees, pang umaga lang sila. So, hanggang sa matapos yung yung schedule is pang umaga lang sila. While yung rotating shift, pwede silang umaga, pwede silang tanghali, and pwedeng gabi. Like, ngayong araw na to, pang umaga sila. And the next day, pang gabi sila. Or sa next day naman, pang hapon sila. Next, Jai. ito na pala, dito na magtatapos yung group discussion natin. So, hope naman natutunan kayo and then thank you very much.